we're going to start with a meditation. And what I'd like to do, I'm going to share a lot in this hour and a half. And a lot of it's going to be participatory as we get to the Golden Civilization conversation after the meditation. But even in the meditation, I want to share something that most of you, unless you've read my recent book, most of you have never seen before. And that is something that I call the map of mindfulness. And I'm going to use it as a frame for how I practice mindfulness, how I teach mindfulness, and how you might also look at your own mindfulness practice. So Laura, if you could share that, that would be wonderful for everybody. And important to be able to see the bottom, move pictures around if you need to, see the bottom as well as the top. And I'm not going to share this in detail because what's important right now is for us to meditate and then move to the Golden Civilization conversation. But what I want to share is that the way that I understand time and space and mindfulness, I've come to realize that our map of time and space is all wrong. That it's focused on the past, on the future, very little on the present moment. And it tends to be a map for where we get lost, ourselves get lost, for where we do all of our selfing, all of our self-centered thinking. But it also is useful because it's a place that civilization exists. If you think about it, the only moment that we've ever really experienced is the present moment. And so it made me realize that by focusing constantly on the past and the future and orienting ourselves in space, our orientation is constantly getting stuck in those places where we get attached. And I thought if we changed the map and understood the map as really originating out of the present moment, that in fact, this might shift. And so I call this the map of mindfulness. Another way of understanding this is that there have been many studies on what brings happiness or freedom into people's lives. Perhaps the most profound one talks about how we only experience happiness in the present moment. And if we're distracted, we're lost, we don't experience it. So one of the ways that I think of a strong mindfulness practice is that it's an attempt to master the present moment. And that attempt at mastery does some amazing and wonderful things. Partly because it's what's real is the present moment, but partly because the present moment, if you keep attempting to meet it, it keeps, disappearing on you, right? I mean, you can't hold, it's one of those things you can't hold on to as much as you might think you can. You can't, it keeps shifting. So the present moment, it turns out, has more energy in it than anything in the universe. There's nothing that shifts so quickly, that doesn't let you be here, basically. So it's incredibly powerful. The Buddha, one of the major teachings of the Buddha was about awakening, which was also called nibbana, various terms for it. Emptiness is another term. I love the term awakening because if you really are come closer and closer to that mastery of the present moment, the more energy you find inside of you, the more alert you are, the more clear you are. So, so my teaching in meditation has primarily been about the present moment. There's a lot of teaching coming from what's called the Brahma Viharis, which are wonderful teachings of compassion and loving kindness. And one of the things that I felt in my own practice is that just by meeting the present moment, what's happening is we're changing our habit from constantly circling around ourselves to just being here with the present moment where there is no self. And so it cultivates selflessness. And in that cultivating of selflessness, not only do we get the energy of the present moment, but we find great peace, we find all the virtues, access to them because of that selflessness. And we find at times profoundly spiritual experiences that I'm calling here Great Spirit. So this is just a really brief introduction to it. I've given talks, you can find them on the website, on the internet and all, and written about it in my most recent book. But I wanted you to have this basis because I'm going to be bringing you back to the present moment. So I think, Laura, we can leave this slide. And so I'm going to be constantly bringing you back to the present moment. And when I do my meditation, I've been 50 years as a meditator, and I've meditated many different varieties of meditation. You've probably already seen that there are many out there. Over the years, I came to this very simple meditation and realizing that it really does it all. And when I approach the present moment, I approach it through the breath. So your focus might be just on meeting moments of sensation of the breath. That's the simplest way. You could also remind yourself of I'm coming back to the present moment, to just being here, to recognizing that I'm here. And the third way is just, if you're really tired, sometimes both of those are challenging. So I just remind myself that I'm in a stream of impermanence, of moments changing. So those are the three places I take my focus. So let's start. Let's take 15 minutes or so of doing a meditation, and then we'll move to the golden civilization conversation. So find a posture where you feel comfortable, where your back is relatively erect, your body at ease. I recommend a closed-eyed meditation because it limits sensations, input from other sensations. And at first, before even going to the breath, see if you can just notice all the different sensations that you feel in your body. You know, what is your body telling you? What's it sharing with you? Not in a conceptual way, not really asking it or in a therapeutic way, but just noticing. What's this sensation? And now, what's this sensation? So letting go of the mind and entering, in a way, the cloak, that cloak of body that we've worn since before we were born. We've had this cloak of body on us. And allow the randomness of those sensations to tell you who you are, to bring you comfort, to bring you here, really to bring you here. And when you begin to feel grounded in being here, you might begin to narrow the focus, to really sharpen your attention to the present moment by bringing your focus to the breath. Keeping the body always completely still. You'll find that deepens your concentration and your presence. Coming to the breath wherever you normally follow it. If it's your meditation, either at the belly or the nostrils normally. At first, just resting in the rhythm of the breath as you let your thoughts go. Just relaxing into this twofold movement of the breath. And whenever a thought arises, Doesn't matter how alluring that thought might be or how annoying it might be. As soon as you notice that you're thinking, let it go. See if you can return to the breath instantaneously without following your thought one thought further. It doesn't matter how many times your mind wanders. Each time it wanders, you have this astonishing opportunity to wake up to the present moment, to just come back here. How wonderful. And as you rest in the rhythm of the breath, this movement at the nostrils, in and out of the breathing, experience of breathing, or at the belly, the rising and falling, or the expanding and contracting of the belly. As you find ease coming from that practice, if you feel like it, it's a wonderful addition to clarity and nimbleness of mind to bring your focus even more sharply to the individual moments of sensation. Here we are coming back again to the present moment. So noticing on the in-breath, where the very first moment of in-breath arises for you. Noticing if it has a temperature to it. If it feels warm or cool. Noticing if it's moving about or if it's completely still. Noticing if it has a texture to it, if you feel it as being rough or smooth, hard or soft, tight or at ease. Each of these sensations, feeling them, not imagining them, but feeling them in their momentary nature. How they are present with you, often for just a moment, and then they're gone. Noticing also as you follow the breath, whether at the belly or at the nostrils, if it has a shape or a dimensionality to it. So here again, the temptation can be to visualize it. Try to feel it instead as you're feeling these sensations. Are they just points in space in your body? Are they linear? Do they have a dimension? Are they a line? Are they a surface Sometimes we feel the breath as it strokes the surface of our nostril or of our belly. Or are the sensations three-dimensional? And again, as you feel these sensations, and their dimensionality, do they have boundaries? Do they have an edge, or are they diffuse? It's really taking an interest in how your breath is expressing itself to you, how it's telling you about yourself in this moment. Letting every thought go, each thought, as soon as you notice that you're thinking. Wandering mentally is not a problem whenever it happens. It just gives us another opportunity to experience being here, to return. It actually gives us the opportunity to strengthen our connection with the present moment. Sometimes we get lost in stories and we just come back. Sometimes we might recognize that we're lost in feelings, in emotions. And if that occurs, feel free to feel them in the body. Not as a story, but as a set of sensations that expresses our sorrow or our anxiety or our frustration. Bringing a touch of kindness to them. As you move from them back to the present moment of the breath. Always letting your thoughts go, your stories go, and finding your authenticity right here. Your presence right here. Keeping the body just as still as you possibly can. No matter how challenging or difficult, just returning. Martin Buber used to say that the whole spiritual, the central spiritual act is the act of returning. So in these last few minutes of the meditation, you might bring yourself back to your torso, back to your body, becoming more aware of being grounded in a body here. And in particular, to notice the feelings, the feeling tones that express themselves just through the body, the feelings of warmth, of contact, of excitement or anxiety, of peace, whatever is there. Just opening yourself. And as we begin to come out, just in a minute or two into this conversation, to be aware that engagement, political engagement, can press people's buttons. We can find ourselves on different sides with people we love. And so just as you brought to these moments of presence of the breath and of sensations in your body, just as you brought care, careful attention, kindness, presence, equanimity to each of these moments inside yourself, you might remind yourself that that's exactly what you would like to bring to this community that has gathered together to explore both mindfulness and engagement in the world. And so closing your meditation by accessing those feelings that you've been utilizing of clarity of thinking, of equanimity, tranquility, patience, kindness. So please come back to the group as you find yourself ready. Hopefully with some of those feelings. Wonderful to see so many people I don't know and so many people I do know. Welcome, welcome. I wish we could meditate longer, but then I wish we could engage longer. So there's, we do have a time frame. I'm going to talk just a little bit about the Golden Civilization, maybe just 5 or 6 minutes. And then we're going to start the conversation where I'm going to ask for your engagement. So I want to set it up as a frame for you, just so people can see, because I know a number of you have been part of, at least now some of you are behind pictures that have been part of Golden Civilization conversations. But wave if you've been in the middle of a Golden Civilization conversation somewhere at some point. So you'll see that we've got some population here. It's not everybody by any means, but maybe a third of the group, which is just great. So, and wonderful to see you back. My notion here, I don't want to go into all the history of it because I want to keep this very brief. Coming out of a terrible political time that we've had, but also coming out of the work that I did as a professional to bring people to their dreams of freedom. That was primarily what I did and how I taught actually financial advisors all over the world to focus on people and freedom, not on the money. And what I realized was that you could use that same design for civilization. We call it life planning. And I thought, you know, with the troubles that we have, and we're not really clarifying, clearing these up, we're taking so long, things at times seem to be getting worse, and they ought to be feeling progressively better and strongly better. And I thought, it's time for us to life plan civilization. And my image, one of the things we do in this life planning is things that people thought they couldn't do for 20, 30 years. We say, no, let's do them now. let's do it within a year and a half. Let's make it all happen. And so my thought with civilization was, let's not wait. Let's do it now. Let's have a game plan where everything that we believe in is accomplished within a generation. And what would happen if we had that fiery and that profound a vision of freedom for all people all over the globe? If we linked in this time of Zoom and internet all over the globe with these very, very similar dreams of freedom, what would it be like? And my intuition was, and it's borne out as I've traveled around the globe, giving talks about this and then leading these conversations, is nobody wants corruption. If I ask people what they want in a golden civilization, nobody puts corruption in there. Nobody puts war in there. Nobody puts inequality in there. Nobody puts dictatorships in there. I mean, it's like, and this is true even in cultures that are problematic with their government, much more problematic even than we feel here in America. So nobody wants those things. And it turns out that what people want are quite universally true as well. We'll share our own version of it here. And my thought was, gosh, if we all want this stuff, why don't we just make it happen? Let's gather together and through participative democracy, here's a structure for it, and that's what I'm going to show you. Let's just make it happen. And let's take back the power from the politicians that we vote for and that we're codependent on, and that, you know, they don't do then what we want, or they're not able to for some reason or other. Let's make it happen ourselves, and let's make it happen within a generation. So that's the basic idea of this. And the other piece of this that I'm thinking now is, you know, that was then, that was my idea a couple of years ago. Well, here we are in coronavirus time, and you're beginning to see in opinion pieces that people are writing, whatever journal you're reading, you're beginning to see it's time to vision. Let's hope we get it right coming out of this. You know, we don't want to do it the way we did it in the past. But it is a time for visioning, both in our small family community, but also now in all of our Zoom communities. If we can access a vision that corresponds community by community all over the world, we can make something happen. Because we move from that vision, you'll see in the model we have, from vision to looking at what the obstacles are, to looking at action steps and making it happen. So we're also in a time, I don't know if you saw the economic news today, but some people are now speculating that this will be worse than the Great Depression. And in some ways, I think it may be sharper than it. I don't know that it will be longer. I don't think so. But it looks terrible. And once again, that was a time when tremendous change occurred. In some parts of Europe, the change that occurred was terrible. It was fascist. In America, changes occurred that really led to tremendous freedom in many ways and for many decades. But my vision is we do it now for thousands of generations. We get it right. We nail it with our visionary power and with our action coming together. So that's my vision for a golden civilization. And it's important for the coronavirus time to be thinking in this way. How can we do it right? Because it's a fiasco. It never should have happened like this. And we never should have had this bad an economic collapse, even if we had a bit of a plague. So how do we make it so that it doesn't happen again? And so that the world is sustainable, so our freedom is sustainable, so we're bringing that freedom and greater equality everywhere in the world. How do we get that vision, see what the obstacles are, and then energetically go after the actions? How do we bring together the groups that are active in different ways? Climate, social justice, economic justice, political, all of these different ways. So this is the structure we're about to engage in, and we'll come back and forth to the group. And, you have something called a chat button below. And if you press that, you can start typing in. And what we're going to do is we're going to look first at the vision. What would make a golden civilization so that it would have that sustainability and really would work for the rest of our, for all of our ancestors, for all of our descendants, forever, basically. So we're not going to deal with obstacles now, and we're not going to deal with actions now, but we're going to come back to them because we want to be realistic about this. This isn't just kumbaya. We want to join around the vision, but then we want to understand what the obstacles are and get to work with our actions and our commitments. So, and this is a structure I'm hoping that you might find useful to take to your groups or to work with your own family around and think, how can we gather together these golden civilizations? And as you see in this group alone, there's a handful of people who've led these in different parts of the world, different countries, in fact. So let's start with vision, Laura, who's doing the screen for us. Let's go to just vision. And what I'd like you to do is call out, start chatting in what your, a single word for what that vision of a golden civilization looks like. What does it include? I'll just share sustainability myself, because, but you can bring whatever word you see, or you could bring a phrase, or you could bring a sentence, but it's going to be easier for Laura to type in. And I think as these get written in, what I'd like to do is ask Hugh and Kaira Jewel to read them out. So, and Laura, let's see everybody. Should we see do you want to see the circle? I think if we see the circle, we won't hear everything. So I think we'll see the circle at the end. So,
safety. Kaira Jewel, you want to read?
You want to go back and forth, or you just go forward and Kaira pitch in whenever you feel like it?
From Isabel, fair and equitable elections. Haley with safety. Scott, community. Louise, earth-centered. Haley, health. Laura, peace. Jeffrey, freedom. Kaira Jewel, do you want to jump in anytime?
Sure. Haley, clean resources. Indresh, health. Marcia, equality. Lorena, community. Laura, love. Rory, harmony. Graham, appreciation. Kate, inclusiveness.
Yeah, Rory, generosity. Ritesh, morality. Rosemary, nutritious food. Hugh, compassion. Haley, sustainable food. Essie Hoffman, equity in education. Darby, love for oneself and others. Keeps moving as I read. Sophie, joy. Rory, sharing. Kaira Jewel, do you want to jump back in?
Sure. Yeah, Lorena, reciprocity. Rory, laughter. Rosemary, clean water and air. Ale, interbeing. Scott, local food and energy. Laura, respect. Naomi, gender equality. Lorena, play.
Right. Wonderful. Are we slowing down here? Is there?
Yeah, we got to.
We got them all.
Yeah,
We got them all.
So Laura, would you like to share that? I'd like everybody to see what Laura, I'm sure Laura has a third of them typed in or whatever. We'll see. You're being scored on this, Laura. Just kidding. And we've had someone else share their screen for some reason, Martin, just make sure that Laura's just beginning, and we'll have more. But so one of the things that you've heard all the things that Kaira Jewel and Hugh have shared, and the question that we ask here is, if as a consequence of our work together and with communities, joining together with communities all over the world who are also doing this visioning process and are coming up with very similar concerns and feelings, if we were to deliver this, let's go back to the group now, Laura, if we can, if we were to deliver this as a consequence of our work together to the whole world, within a single generation, within 20 years, how would that be? If you think it'd be astonishing or really, really good, then put your thumbs up, wave, maybe wave, something. It would be pretty phenomenal. It'd be pretty phenomenal. And what's been amazing is that this is what people want. It's not just us. People want it all over the world. So the second question then is what the obstacles are. And in different parts of the world, there'll be different flavors to those obstacles. I've been in India where leading one or two with Indresh, and maybe others of you who are here. And there's a slightly stronger theme toward inequality and poverty. But that's a theme that pops up everywhere. So that there are themes that have greater strength or greater tenacity in different communities. Laura, maybe we should move on to the next chart, which is obstacles, both inner and outer obstacles. So the question is, what could possibly get in the way? If all of us are visioning together, what could possibly get in the way of that energy that we find from the Golden Civilization vision? So again, outer or inner, you can just, if you think they're a mix, just put them down, whatever they are.
Just sharing from Naomi, I don't know that it's true that everyone wants all of these things. So that might come up more as an obstacle, I think, maybe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep, great.
Wisdom traditions taught, indigenous cultures from all traditions, egos, fear of change, centralized banking.
Wisdom traditions taught in indigenous cultures are not obstacles, sorry.
Yeah,
right.
That was from before, right?
Thank you.
Right. Existing massive and rising population, Ritesh. Kate, fear of change and mistrust. The screen keeps moving.
Outer dominant power and tribalism. No one who has power or resources want to give them up. Hysteria, maybe?
Yeah, hysteria.
Hysteria. Poverty, people needing control, crime, lack of knowledge, of data protection. You want to continue, Hugh?
Food insecurity, greed, egos, self-preservation, corruption, fear, nationalism, greed, jealousy, climate change, pollution, diverse cultures. I don't know if maybe did my screen bounce back? I'm not sure. Maybe I'm reading from a little bit before as well.
Do you want me to continue?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, these two look like they're more visions, but diverse cultures and understanding each other fully, that seems more like part of the vision. And nations' ability to allow people to progress away from ego to selfless giving, rooting our beliefs to what religions have taught for centuries. How do we continue the story from century to century? I think those would be more vision, right? And then more on the obstacles: fear, insecurity, uncertainty, fear, divide between lower and upper class growing wider, racial inequities. The current governing bodies have a plan for the world that may not be a golden plan. How can our vision override theirs?
Great.
Education.
I'm just feeling the press of time, and we've got so many things, and we'll continue to try to record these. And Laura, will we be able to have these later for people, do you think? Great. All right. Fantastic. Because it'd be wonderful to have kind of the community, the communal feel of this. So what I'd like to do is to move to the third chart. Let's see the obstacles first. And we've heard many. Some of us have been watching the chat room at the same time and seeing the different challenges that are there. Again, these obstacles are obstacles that you'll find all over the world. I found when I've led this, and greed and fear tend to be two of the major ones internally, but racism, poverty, government, corporations, misunderstandings, all of the things that are mentioned here, hatred, religion, tribalism, patriarchy, all of these things are found at this point all over the world. And the question that I have now, we've got a vision of something that's pretty extraordinary. And we've got a list of obstacles that also are really, really detailed. The question, if we move to the next chart, Laura, the final chart, which is action steps and commitments, you might put an A or a C before whatever you're contributing here. The question with action steps is globally, what could we do? What could the major nations do, or the UN do? What could we as communities do? What could we do in nation states? What can we do with labor unions? What can we do in nonprofits? What can we do? But then what can we do in our local community? What can we do in our family? What can we do inside ourselves? So these are all action steps. So they're all different kinds of things that can be done. And then the second is commitments. And under commitments is what are each of us willing to commit to do. And usually we do this and we come back a couple of weeks later and have the next Golden Civilization conversation, and we check in with people about their commitments. So what are the commitments? It'd be wonderful to see what your commitments are too. And we might check in. It might be a few months before I come back with this design again, but we might check in around those commitments again. And again, if you're doing this with your own communities, you might do it on every couple of weeks, coming together and making something like this happen. So Hugh, would you like to read what you're seeing in actions and commitments?
Yeah. Walk the walk, genuinely free and fair elections. That's an action. Reduce prison populations, commitment, time, action, have one agenda, lead your community. Can you repeat the instructions? Sorry, I got distracted. I think, George, just to say A and C, right? Actions.
What are the actions that will really make this happen, the Golden Civilization, will solve the obstacles, and what are commitments that you're willing to make? So that's it, yeah.
Have conversations, buy our products from local vendors and suppliers. UN has consensus on sustainable development goals of global well-being for 3030?
Yes, that's right.
Many see this as a guide for action. Find meaningful employment for former inmates. Local food systems. Meet at real-life meetings to vote for specific actions. As an action step, commitment, everyone sign up for concrete steps in personal life. End poverty as an action. Stop eating animals as a commitment. Do you want to continue, Kaira Jewel?
Sure. So end poverty as an action, stop eating animals as a commitment, bring people together. Action, working toward political change and spread mindfulness. Cultivate wisdom, donate to Biden, new consciousness practices. Join grassroots groups, daily meditation practice. Inspire others. A funding for the World Health Organization. Teach mindfulness meditation, a commitment. Make the effort to connect. Help the person in front of me. End armament race as an action. End making arms as a commitment. Realize small steps make a huge difference. 2030 was the date, not 3030. Lorraine, commitment, continue to work on immigration reform and solidarity with those in detention. Commitment, reconsider how best to use my vote at elections. Action, technology, global share. Do you want to keep going, Hugh?
Yeah, commitment, protect our earth and resources. Agenda 2030 is the UN's current plan. Action, citizen task force to understand and create governance for how to protect data. Challenge the normal, meditate more as a commitment. Feeling that we have enough, we are enough as an action. Commitment, connecting to present instant. Abolish, protect our children, mentor others to tech, I think that may be teach. Protect our animals, add one new step each week, each day.
Beautiful, wow. I think these are incredible, and I want to bring Kaira Jewel and Hugh into the conversation and then bring all of you in as much as we can in the time that remains. But I just want to say, you can see how inspiring, I'm getting grin. I can't believe how inspiring all of these action steps and commitments are. And I wish we could kind of go further with this ourselves, further and further and further, and continue to come back and inspire each other to do the things that will make this world a golden civilization, that will bring it into being within a generation. And this is such an inspiring group to be part of. But it is something that you can take. The design is very simple, and you can find through our work, Laura and mine at the Kinder Institute, you can find, or through a Golden Civilization website, you can find how to do this and do it with your local communities. And you're free to use it any way you want and to go forward with it, or to join one of the communities that we already have going. That said, I think it would be wonderful. Oh, here we go. Here's just so you see, we'll take a minute to look at these. And again, the action steps, powerful action steps. And we're going to be adding more, I think. And then the commitments, wonderful to hear that people are willing to make these commitments. And it inspires me to think, are there more ways that I can make commitments to make all of this happen? So Laura, if we can come back so that we can get Hugh and Kaira Jewel in on the conversation here, and then bring the group in when you're ready. So Kaira Jewel and Hugh, any reflections that you want to make? Anything you want to add from your perspective on this piece that we've done today?
Would you like to go, Kaira Jewel, first?
Sure. Yes, just briefly. I was just sharing today on another group that it's so important to give voice to what it is we want. And I really appreciate what you just guided us through, George. For me, there's energy in hearing all these different perspectives, because, well, I teach with a friend who has spent a lot of time building up the transition town movement that started in Totnes, UK. And she tells the story. This is a movement to end reliance on fossil fuels in small communities, and there's now thousands of these transition towns around the world, of neighborhoods or communities or whole towns that have shifted from fossil fuel dependency in transportation, food production, and housing. So she told the story of how at the beginning of their group, they got together and they focused on all the things they didn't want. You know, they didn't want, you know, wasteful, polluting transportation. They didn't want inefficient housing. They didn't want food production that was harming the environment. And as they focused on all these things, their energy went down and down and down. And they got really, you know, kind of depressed. And when they realized that, they flipped it and they said, well, let's focus on what we do want. And when they focused on that, they had all this energy. They had a lot more, you know, motivation. And so I just always remember that story as, you know, both in our personal lives. I like that there was the inner and outer in this exercise, but also in our collective, like being able to speak into the world. It's already a very important first step, just envisioning together what we really do want. Because the seed of that is we breathe life into that seed when we just begin to speak and hold it together. So I'm appreciating that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I really resonate with what you just shared, Kaira Jewel. That whole sense of, you know, how one feels energetically, like many, certainly in the US, I've been very concerned about the government that we've had for the last 3.5 years, and how much damage really has been done within the country, and in so many different ways, through ignorance. You know, in the Buddhist language, it would be through not seeing things as they really are, and therefore, you know, acting out of fear, acting out of greed, and we see it manifesting in so many different ways. And I felt, and I know it's the impact on the whole world, you know, in terms of the US role, which, you know, is never been unproblematical, but certainly in these last few years has been very different from, say, the previous 8 years and other times, in terms of the United States role in the world around climate change, the Iran agreement, so many other things. And so it's been really a major concern of mine to make sure that we have kind of a new leadership. And so much is focused here around these upcoming elections. And this group was really originally kind of formed with that as a big part of the energy. And then, of course, coronavirus came along and, you know, kind of took on center stage, and it's what we're right in the middle of. But that's still very much the context that we need new leadership. And I felt a lot of energy. We need to get rid of, you know, what's harmful right now. But I've also come very much to the view that there is this incredible power in envisioning what we want to see. You know, the kind of energy that Kaira Jewel spoke about, and what everything that George has laid out is about, of like, you know, just thinking about the vision that we have of the future. And I even think of it in terms of what would a government look like here dealing with the coronavirus that is humane, that's compassionate, that's effective, that's all of these things that we think of, yeah, this is what a government should be. How would it have been different, and how can it be different in the future? What would it look like? And I think we can all see some, you know, in a very practical sense, what some of those elements would look like. And when I think about that, and I think about, you know, what can replace what we have right now, it brings a lot of different a lot of more positive energy. And so I do think that there's an incredible power in envisioning what we want to see. Like as George said, I would have loved to have seen this be much more, kind of a little bit more stretched out, so that we'd have time to explore the different things that people were putting forward, you know, over a period of at least 3 or 4 hours. But I think at least this gives us a very good flavor of what we, you know, how we might, you know, unpack this and use it ourselves in our communities and our families, etc. So I just really appreciate you bringing this to us today, and everything that everyone has kind of put into the hopper together. So thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Hugh and Kaira Jewel, thank you so much. Maybe just I'll close the teacher portion of this and then bring the rest of you in. I don't know, Julian, if you're still here, I think you are, but I want to bring you in because you've led the most of these in a single community over and over again. But what Hugh was saying about 3 or 4 hours, fabulous. And I'm now talking with students at a university in England, where we're talking about doing an hour meditation and an hour golden civilization conversation as a kind of weekly or bi-weekly group, so that there's a constant deepening and developing, and people are coming in and sharing what their commitment, how they delivered on their commitments, what actions really took place, and it continuing to inspire. So it has wonderful legs to it if you want them. Kaira Jewel and Hugh, would it be all right if I bring in the community? And
Sure. Yeah.
Julian, is it all right if I ask you first to just say briefly your experience leading these conversations in England again and again and again? Are you there? Oh, you're on mute. Here, I'll unmute you.
Oh, hang on, I need to find my...
You're good. Go ahead.
George, lovely to be invited to say something. Just factually, a group of us have been meeting in these conversations since November 2018. And we have met 6 or 7 times, and we met last week. And there's so much I could say about that, but there are 3 things I want to say right now, because I'm feeling them so strongly. One is, being part of this conversation, hearing all we're saying about what we want, that flood of optimism which courses through my veins, is just a wonderful feeling. Secondly, I think we know, don't we, that if we really attend to the present moment in an appreciative, loving, kind way, we're seeing some wonderful things right now in this terrible crisis. Compassion, kindness, wonder of silence. And we know from study of crisis that if we can just lift the things that are right there in front of us and accelerate them and enhance them, it really helps us in the future. And the third thing I wanted to say is that on Friday, a group of us who didn't know each other 18 months ago are hosting a virtual session called a Center for Wisdom, where a number of us are coming together with the things that we hold dear to talk about. And we've invited many people because we feel it was part of our talks that enhancing wisdom, cultivating wisdom, giving each other more access to resources about wisdom would be a real contribution. I had no idea that would happen a few months ago, but it is, amongst people who didn't know each other, and we are creating it. And that's come simply from us meeting in these conversations. I could say much more, George, but those are a few things I'd say off the cuff.
Thank you so much, Julian, and I'm sure we could all listen to you forever, but there's so many people here, I think, as well. Lovely to hear, and the wisdom, one of the themes of that group, I've been able to participate in just a few of them, and one of the themes was how so many of our institutions don't have wisdom at the top, and it's not percolating all the way down. And shouldn't we, after 250 years of industrial revolution, shouldn't we be finding the very best of humanity, our compassion and our wisdom at the top of every hierarchy of power? And so this group took that seriously, I think, and has developed a whole curriculum around it. So very exciting. But let's hear from any of you that feel like sharing. And again, Hugh and Kaira, feel free to leap back in as well. You have to unmute yourself. Looks like Louise Green is coming in. Can't hear you, Louise. Can't hear you.
I will unplug.
There you go.
Okay. I appreciate this so much. I have a question that my brain has been playing over since the meditation or your introduction, which is the difference between meeting the present moment and mastery of the present moment.
Yeah, yeah.
The energetic feeling for me is different.
Yeah, it is. And you could also have another frame of it. You could also have observing the present moment, and they're all slightly different. You could also have experiencing the present moment. They're all slightly different. And the truth is that you can't master the present moment. It's one of the humbling, I mean, we learn humility from doing meditation because it's really impossible to do. But the attempt is actually teaching us humility. It's making our minds, giving more agility to our minds. It's bringing more kindness and compassion to ourselves because of that failure of attempt, and recognizing all the ways our desire and fear get in the way. But you're right, if you have just a slight shift in tone around the frame, the delivery, the result is slightly different. And that's true for all forms of meditation I've found over my 50 years of practice. And I'm open to any one of them. The main theme that I was trying to bring up is that we're primarily focused on space and time, and it's really the present moment that we keep returning to, but it's the hidden jewel. We didn't realize that it's what's really happening again and again. And mindfulness gives us a way of getting stronger and stronger in our engagement with it, our familiarity with it, and a relative mastery of it.
Yes, thank you. I just noticed that the word mastery, for me, I started a reaction of, how would I do that? How would I get that right? What would that be? You know, like spiritual striving, which is my own tendency, I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, the approach maybe for me is more skillful when almost more lateral somehow.
Absolutely.
Just that's me. I think it's my stuff, but.
No, it's I mean, it's the reason we have different practices, and it's the reason that the Buddha talked about skillful means. Was those skillful means were not universal, they weren't hierarchical. They're for each of us individually to recognize and utilize. So thank you for that. Yes, Naomi.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I have this is taking it maybe up a level, just generally to the engagement question. I have a question about anger, and I appreciate the shift here towards thinking about things we want and envision. And like, I know when I worked on the Hill for a long time, it was great being in the majority, not just because we had power, but because we could create things rather than just defend things. And it was more energizing. So I love all that, but I'm also very, very angry at our leadership a lot of the time. And I don't love messaging of sort of not having anger or having more skillful feelings. I don't love, partly because women are taught not to be angry from the time we're born. And I don't think that's actually very healthy for many of us. But I'm wondering, and this is not a short discussion, I guess, but even just impressions of like ways to practice most constructively channeling anger. I would just appreciate any reflections.
I have my way of approaching it, but I think it'd be wonderful to hear from Kaira Jewel and Hugh. My hunch is that each of us has a slightly different way my hunch also is that this is a universal issue for us right now. And for people who are engaged politically, I think it's a very important issue, Naomi. So Kaira Jewel, would you like to share first? And
Sure, I'll just say something brief. I really like the term fierce compassion because it gives space for really coming from a energized, strong place of boundaries. And for me, that's where I can pour, you know, anger and this sense of, you know, there is great injustice happening, and anger is, it's a very natural experience in the face of that. I mean, we just think of how we would protect a child that we loved from aggression. We would have force to protect that child from that aggression. It wouldn't be something soft. And it could be that anger would be motivating us, but it would be with this greater, with, you know, from a place of love. And so I think it's important to be able to access our fierceness. And I really appreciate that you spoke to that, especially as a woman, to not suppress that, because that can be really disempowering to not be able to own our own anger. And I guess for me, it's just because the fire of anger can quickly slip out of our wisdom. It's just really important to have the compassion of protecting, you know, the well-being, and not let it flip into, you know, blame, judgment, wanting to punish, because that can happen. And that doesn't serve our deeper purpose of love, of creating justice. It creates more harm. So it's a tricky thing to work with you know, to be able to recognize and really work with the shadow side of anger when we want to, you know, transmute its activating principle into creating justice coming from compassion. Yeah, thank you.
you?
Yeah, I mean, I very much that really resonate with that, and I think it's a really important question and point that you raised, Naomi. I think it's also worth naming that the way of not opening to the energy of anger is also a shadow side of Buddhism. You know, I don't think it's the essence, but I think it's a shadow that somehow, you know, anger is like, oh no, we're supposed to be calm, and, you know, the kind of stereotype of kind of being calm and peaceful, and that seeing anger as in some way bad or wrong. And, you know, how would a lot of change, you know, important, necessary change happened? The civil rights movement in the United States, for example, without, or opposing apartheid in South Africa without really that fierce anger. And as you say, Kaira Jewel, it can, without wisdom and without mindfulness, it can very easily flip over into, you know, the bad other that we have to destroy in order to get the good things that we want. And so mindfulness is really a key to being able to channel that necessary energy of anger, because anger in itself is neutral. You know, anger is a message from the world that we need to take care of something here. You know, the child that's being harmed, we need to do something, put ourselves in the way, whatever it is. So the anger is not in itself in any way a bad thing or a negative emotion. But if it's not met wisely, it can have really negative consequences. And so the importance, I think, as you're sharing, of allowing ourselves to feel what we're feeling, feel that energy, you know, in the present moment, as George is saying, you know, this is what's here right now. Can I let it come, let it flow through me? And actually with wisdom, with awareness, in the present moment, channel that energy, in a positive way towards the change that we want to see, or towards the action that will lead to greater justice and greater peace and well-being. So I think it's, there's not an answer to the question, but the question itself is just so powerful, because it's really about how we meet the present moment. Do we meet the present moment with awareness, or do we meet it without awareness? And what are the consequences of each, going in one direction rather than another? So yeah, that's kind of what I would add. Thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. Can we see the chat transcript after this, just because so many people seem to be commenting and I don't want to miss?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much.
I'm excited about that too, Naomi. And
Thank you.
just one more thing. There's a practice that I teach called letting thoughts go, letting feelings be. And anger, feelings tend to have an arc. They're like a wave, whereas thoughts are like particles. So you let your thoughts go, but the feeling continues. So if you can feel the anger inside the body, that's one way to channel it, just to let your thoughts go, but to acknowledge that that feeling is there. And then the other thing that I found is the more you practice, the more you do mindfulness or any other practice that you're doing, the more that you're building selflessness inside yourself, which allows you to have this experience that Hugh was talking about, that there's a wisdom in there, and it's not attached to self. It's where we get attached to ourselves that the anger hooks us. But otherwise, there needs to be a lot of, as Kaira was saying, we need to be out there making noise, because there's danger happening right now. So yeah, thank you. Sissy Hoffman has had her hand raised, I think, for a while. Is that?
Could I just add one short thing too about the need to be mindful with anger? It's important to see how it narrows our mind, right? That it has this real power, but then it can also cut us off from really important information, because it just zooms in on. So it's just like, how do we not get caught by it? Yeah.
So Sissy, do you want to dive in?
Yes. Hi, everybody. It's Sissy from Savannah, Georgia. And I think that the topic of anger is at the root of why I'm here in this group. I found myself experiencing anger when I had planned on having this. Well, I had expectations, which was the problem, of a calm retirement. But at any rate, y'all have addressed anger previously when we did the group activity action. One of the ways in which I extinguish some parts of anger is to replace it with action. So if I'm doing something as simple as writing a postcard to an unregistered voter, I find that I lose my anger because I'm replacing it, I guess, with positive energy. So y'all have addressed that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Sissy. Great additional solution and information there. We still have time for some more comments or questions or engagement.
And just on Sissy, is it? Sissy's comment about action, Angelus Arian says action absorbs anxiety. And maybe we could also say action absorbs anger in the example you gave. Thank you.
Lorena, looks like she's opening.
Hi, and I'm sorry, I was multitasking when folks were talking before. So I may have missed this, but I'm not sure what the direction is of this moving forward. I've been politically engaged, like in activism, since I was a teenager, and I've been wanting in the last couple of years to see like this merging of the different activism communities, as they're all very siloed, it feels like in many ways, to come together. And for the spiritual community to be there as well, because there's a lot of anger in activism communities that is important and understandable, but there's not necessarily a lot of wise discernment. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Like, are you proposing like a Congress? Like, I think that happened a long time ago, and I think some of those have continued to go on. Yeah, I think of like a gathering in Brazil, like 20 years ago happened or something. Wondering what your thoughts are. Yeah.
Well, for myself, I think mindful engagement, our group here, that we're doing something, Golden Civilization's doing something else, but I think that we've got a Facebook page and a Facebook group for mindful engagement, and we would welcome kind of comments, and we've hardly been utilizing it, but it'd be one way to kind of begin to put that together from the standpoint of just us here. And I will say that the work I'm doing with, it's called agoldencivilization.com. My vision is that we make these visionary conversations, create them all over the world, and that we find ways then to link together, because we've got the internet that's capable of doing that. And so I don't know. Just a Congress isn't going to do it. We need grassroots. We need us to be engaged, which is why in that model we have commitments at the end. We need everybody to be engaged to make participative democracy happen and for the world to be sustainable, I think, is my bias. So, so I don't know if you, Kaira Jewel, if you have anything you want to add to that, or if I answered your question, Lorena.
I'll just say that it sounds like a beautiful part of the action part of this exercise to keep visioning and sharing. It's a beautiful idea of gathering, and I mean, let's blow on that seed. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Kaira Jewel, I think we're coming to the last few minutes, and it's your close tonight.
Sure. Is there anything you'd like to say before we close, Hugh?
Well, just what you've just been saying. I mean, I think these gatherings each month are an opportunity for us. We're taking different kind of themes, and this one I hope we will, continue to follow up on. You'll say something about next month, and we'll be exploring different kind of elements of this. But I think it all comes together within that same kind of the rubric of what this group was, this program was really founded around, which was how do we bring the practices of inner wisdom, of transformation, of mindfulness and compassion and equanimity, how do we bring them into engagement with the suffering of the world and healing, bringing compassion into the world. And I think that for me, that's kind of it's been at the core of our conversation, I think, here today, but it's at the core of what the world needs, is that it's not just about changing the structures and the institutions and the policies. It's really about changing our own hearts. It's transforming our own hearts and engaging with each other to create a more beautiful world that we know is possible, that as Charles Eisenstein put it, and very similar to what George is talking about with a golden civilization. So I see this as, over these coming months to the end of the year, being another forum, a forum for helping us have these conversations and move forward and kind of bring us together in these ways. So, thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. So yes, I want to offer us a closing, just a brief practice together to close. But I first want to tell you about next month, which I'll be leading. And the focus is inclusiveness and intimacy, medicine for polarization and privilege. So same time last Wednesday. Oh, actually next month, we're not doing the last Wednesday of May because none of us can make it. We're doing June 3rd, so it's the first Wednesday of June. It's a slight difference, but it's in about four or so weeks. So we hope you'll join us for that. We'll be looking at, ways to use our practice to really uproot, sort of the causes of separation, privilege, oppression, racism, many kinds of ways that we don't allow each other to be fully human, by opening our hearts to each other and connecting to our interbeing. So with that said, yeah, I just want to give voice to what Lorena shared. A wonderful book, Radical Dharma, Talking Race, Love, and Liberation. The book about a book and a movement with workshops. Thank you for sharing that. I also want to let you know that I'm offering daily meditations with Sangha Live. If you're in Europe or Asia, it's not really at a good time for people in the US, but I'll just put that information in the chat if you wish to join. From 12 to 1 is Sri Lankan time, and it's 7:30 to 8:30 UK time. And I think that's just this next week. I'm taking someone's place who's ill. So let's just take a moment. We're at time, but just to feel into our bodies, and I'd like us to bring to mind something we wrote in the chat about our vision for what a world would be like, what our communities, what our home lives, our family lives would be like in a golden civilization. Just bring one word to mind that you shared in the chat, or if it was someone else's that really grabbed you, bring that to mind. And feel in your body, visualize yourself in a golden civilization, and with that quality being realized in your daily life, in your interactions with others, in the way you thought about yourself, in the way people were treating and interacting with the earth. And just for a moment, hold an image of that as real and alive and in the ether between you and others, and feel what that would feel like in your body. Sense of safety or trust or ease or openness, whatever it is. See if you can let it really fill every cell of your body, this experience. Deep respect or all-pervading justice. Let yourself breathe it in and bathe yourself with it, inside, outside, all around. Thank you so much for this wonderful time together. And I'll turn it over to George or Laura for our closing. Really good to be with you all.
Really wonderful. Do we have any final words, Laura? Are we done?
Just to say thank you, and that we will be following up with an email of this recording, as well as a donation link for the teachers and resources on everything that was shared. And we'll also have those visuals of your beautiful vision, the obstacles, and then your actions and commitments from today's session. So thank you so much for being here.
Wonderful. Really wonderful to be with you all. Thank you so much.
George, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Court Lane. All right.
Thank you. Be well.
Bye.